Cool. Well, welcome back to the Breaking Ice podcast. My name is Josh Ferguson, and today I have the lovely opportunity to sit down with Rebecca Alty, the
Alty.
Alty.
Yeah.
I need to change my files. Rebecca Alty, the MP candidate for the Northwest Territories, the Liberal candidate for MP in the Northwest Territories, and former mayor of Yellowknife from...
Current mayor on break.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait. Current mayor on break. Who's the mayor now?
There's an acting mayor, so the deputy mayor. So
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Ben Hendrickson. So
Okay,
council
cool.
gave me permission to miss 3 meetings, which takes us exactly to April 28th.
Okay, and then you'll know or not know, and then...
Exactly.
All right, so I'm sure we'll get to all that, but where are you from?
From Yellowknife. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Born
Your
and
whole life.
raised. Yeah.
That's awesome. What was Yellowknife like when you were a kid?
It's, I guess...
Or
It's
how
grown.
has it changed?
It's grown a lot. And when I graduated high school, I went off to university, and that was during kind of the diamond boom as the mines were getting up and running. And so, be like every time I came back, there would be a new subdivision. So definitely,
I know that
a lot
feeling.
of growth.
My family moved to Central Mexico when I was 9, so I lived there for 10 years, like in the most formative years of my life. And when I would come back for Christmas throughout university, that same kind of thing. It was like, what? There's a new grocery store there? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, and I was working for KFC, and I was a delivery driver, and it's
Okay.
like Bork, and I was like, what? Where? And it's pre getting your cell phone out and tell me where.
The map era.
Getting the map out, and
What a nightmare.
Yeah.
Thank God that's over.
Well, and it is still like a case of from an old time Yellowknifer to another old time. You know, what the old Canadian Tire was?
Oh, yeah.
Versus like if I'm talking to somebody who's newer to Yellowknife and they're like, no. And then I'm like, I guess the Canadian Tire did move in the 90s.
Yeah. I saw this meme today that was like, my brain works like this. The 1970s were 30 years ago. The 80s were 20 years ago. The 90s were 10 years ago. Now, 2018 was last year.
Oh, yeah. Well, listening to, when I reflect on when I was a kid, I would listen to like classic rock.
Sure.
Which was only 10 or 20 years, 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
I was listening in the 80s.
Oh, no, now it's ancient history.
I know. I was like...
But still killer.
Oldies but goldies could be the 90s. And I'll be like, no.
That's awesome. Nice. All right. So what were your parents like? What brought them to Yellowknife? Were they always from Yellowknife as well?
No, they were from the Toronto area. So
Okay.
my dad was a small engines mechanic. And so he got a job up in Yellowknife, fixing snow machines, boats, chainsaws.
Awesome. That's forever work up here.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a Harley dealership. And
Okay, cool.
so, he came up and my mom was like, cool, let's give it a try. And so...
Let's go on an adventure.
Yeah. Adventure check, and stayed for...
Still here.
Still there. Yeah. And then they had 3 kids. I'm
Cool.
the oldest. And then one of my sisters is a teacher now in Calgary. The other's in Ottawa. And
Okay.
I'm still in
Spread
Yellowknife.
out.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I can't imagine what it would be like to grow up in a place and then become the mayor of that place. I feel like that's kind of a bizarre experience.
Yeah. And I would say I was probably like a lot of teenagers in a small town where like you graduate and you're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then went off to university in Calgary, and then we've got, SFA. So I came back, I was going to work a year and then be like, and then I'm out of there. But then I was like, actually, this place is great as an adult.
Well, it's one of those things where like once you get to somewhere and start building a life, like you're like, I'm only going to be here for a few years, whatever. And then you're like, wait, why do I have to leave? I don't have to leave. Like,
100%.
Do I need to restart? Like, I had that experience. I went to school in Thunder Bay, and a lot of my friends stayed in Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
And we ended up not for a variety of reasons, but I thought it was interesting, just like that. Wait, I don't have to leave. Mm-hmm. And I really admire, like, as someone who's moved a lot in my life and kind of moved around the country, and lived in Mexico and lived in Ontario and in Gatineau, and then up here in London and whatever. I feel like I've cultivated the skill of being able to kind of make anywhere home.
Yeah.
But there's another skill that I appreciate, especially with people up here, but then also just like people who were like born and raised in London, Ontario, where they love and appreciate the things about their home as opposed to just being like jaded about their home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think what I love about Yellowknife is that it's, you can go for sushi and yoga, and then
Yeah,
like 2
it's
seconds later,
metropolitan.
you're like in the bush and doing stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I really struggled when I was in Calgary because I would commit to like 5 things in one night and forget that I have to commute. And so like across the Northwest Territories is like you can do multiple things. And,
Yes.
And I hate commuting. So
One thing I love about living in Northern Wales is like we are remote and like rural, but everything's only 7 minutes away.
yeah.
You know?
Oh, I like the view from your window here
I
is
know.
incredible.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm spoiled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very, I was like, so how much is your house?
Wow.
Name the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful little spot. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I feel really lucky that we stumbled into this kind of beautiful little life up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, and I feel like the North has so many opportunities. Like if you want to do something, you know, you talk to a few people and they're like, yeah, I want to help with that, and can get done.
It's one of the benefits of there not being a giant population, but there still being a relatively high amount of like economic activity is like there are services that people need, and there's a lack of those things. So like you can just jump in anywhere, and as long as you're willing to like work hard enough and prove that you can deliver the goods, you have opportunity.
Well, and I feel like people, because it's a small place, know who to connect you with.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you got to talk to so-and-so. They're going to be able to X, Y, and Z. And,
Totally.
yeah.
Well, that
and you
has
can, like,
been
talk to the mayor. And the
that's
grocery
exactly
store.
it. It's been like
Yeah.
a bizarre experience for mine in terms of starting the podcast and being like, I just like to talk to people. I'm going to do this thing. And then like all of a sudden, like these people who in larger places would be like very inaccessible are just like reaching out to me. It's super random for me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, it's cool. I really like it. And,
Yeah.
and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm also a marriage commissioner.
Okay. What does that mean?
I can perform weddings.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
as the mayor, and so then people reach out and like, I know you're busy, but I want to get married like tomorrow or Saturday.
I've never considered having the mayor marry me.
Yeah, no, it's people just show up at City Hall being like, "Is this a thing? Can you?" And I was like, "I happen to have it, so yes, I can."
Oh, okay. So you
marry
don't just have it because you're mayor.
No, but you apply to the territorial government to get the authority.
Okay.
And I guess it's like maybe it's because I'm the mayor, it's easier to do or something.
My wife and I got married in Mexico, but we did the legal paperwork in North Bay in Ontario. And we reached out to City Hall, and they were like, we don't do that anymore. And I was like, what? They're like, there's this guy on Facebook, contact him. And it was like heart-to-heart connections or something.
Oh.
And we got married in his living room, which is so random, but yeah.
The first wedding I performed was during COVID.
Okay.
And so, it was the bride and the groom and each of their kids.
Had GoPros on and things like that.
Yeah. And it was like people were watching at home, and I was like, it's a great accessibility thing, because I thought of like grandma was online and she was 90 and not able to travel, and I was like, if it was pre-COVID, I bet it would have been more of a ceremony, and nobody would have had the camera out for grandma. But
Totally.
yeah,
That's cool. So you grew up in the territory, and you lived in Yellowknife most of your life. Have you spent much time outside of Yellowknife? Like sometimes it can feel, as someone who lives in the Sahtú, like there's the Yellowknife bubble and then there's the rest of the north. So how much kind of reaching out have you done?
Yeah. So Yellowknife's the only community in the Northwest Territories I've lived in.
Okay.
But being president of the Northwest Territories Association of Communities, so that's the mayors and chiefs and councillors across the NWT. And I was also involved in soccer, so both playing, coaching, and then I became an instructor because I didn't want to coach for forever and ever. I wanted to build that capacity. So definitely got to travel the Northwest Territories, NWT, and really the rest of Canada through those roles. And so just in this campaign alone, I'm managing to go to 20 of the 33 communities. And
nice.
Two the communities which I hadn't been to before the campaign was Fort Good Hope and Fort Resolution, so it was really nice to be able to get there.
Yeah,
Fort Good Hope yesterday and Fort Res a little while ago. So
I'm like since I moved to the Sahtú, like I've been almost everywhere in the Sahtú. I'm like excluding, I've been to the airport in Colville Lake, but it's cool to kind of see all these. These places are wild. Like they're so off the beaten path and such a part of like Canadian history and heritage, and there's so much history that like is down the street from us. Like it's shocking. But again, it's just like off the beaten path, and these little like kind of not like forgotten about, but like really unknown places.
There's one little tip. If you do have like Aeroplan points, the Yellowknife to Edmonton or Yellowknife to Ulahuktuk is the same amount of points.
Oh, yeah.
But a vastly different price.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, we can't let Aeroplan know that the North is such a good deal.
yeah, I was like, you barely pay for Aeroplan airport fees. But yeah, I've also, when I go to auctions and stuff in Canadian North, they'll have tickets. And when I bid on them, I'm always using it to go to, like, went to Ulahuktuk last summer.
Yeah.
And so being able to get up to a place that so many more Canadians should visit.
That's cool.
Incredible golfing.
Oh, nice.
The Ravens are jerks and they'll steal your ball. So you have to like...
They'll steal the ball?
Oh, yeah. You've got to hit it and run.
And then throw fries this way?
Yeah. Because they definitely stole 2 of the 3 balls that we had.
That's like, hilarious. Oh. I kind of want to explore your past a little bit more. So your parents moved up to Yellowknife. What brought them up north? And tell me about their character, if you can.
Yeah. So yeah, it was my dad and his, he was a small engines mechanic.
Yeah.
So that brought him up north, and then, fell in love with the hunting and the community.
He came up single?
No, he came up with my mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and
he
were
got
they
a
married
job.
by that point?
No. And so they came up, and then a couple of years later they had me, and by then I'd fallen in love with and as a small engines mechanic, the snowmobiling, the even the motorcycles.
Sure.
So yeah, he definitely.
So did you grow up like turning wrenches and stuff with him?
Not as much, but when I turned 18, actually, I think it was on my 8th Christmas, somebody had totaled their motorcycle, and so they'd given it to him, and he rebuilt it, and so he gave me the deed to that and was like, when you turn 18, you can have this motorcycle.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that was one of my Christmas presents when I was 8. And then my mom, started out babysitting or childcare, and then got a job in the law offices, and then she's now been with the federal government, the Crown's office, for 36 years. So she's also traveled around the Northwest Territories. Nice.
And what were their like guiding principles or values? Like how would you kind of describe your, how were you raised?
Yeah, I would definitely say being active and in the community. My mom was heavily involved in soccer, which she became involved when I played in super soccer in grade 6 and fell in love with the sport.
Super soccer.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then she started helping. Wasn't coaching, but really the organizing and getting teams together and finding coaches for us. And so
cool.
Both my team and then my sister's team, and then started doing like kick miss and mini World Cup for those who participated in the North Slave region.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's definitely cool. Like giving back and involved in the community would be a big thing there.
Yeah. And then was it like a predictably structured like family life? You had dinners together and things like that, or was it a little bit more? Because there's all these different ways to raise a family, but it's just kind of I find it interesting to understand how people were brought up. It tells you so much about kind of the way they think and
yeah. We definitely had the family dinners, which were probably like quick, and then we got to get to soccer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The extracurriculars with little kids, we before they're 4, there's not really any extracurriculars like daycare or whatever, but it's like all of a sudden there's like hockey at like 6:30, and it's like, that's dinner time. What's going on?
It was like brownies and then the guides and the soccer. And so definitely did a lot of camping when I was young, and doing road trips to Alaska, and so
you guys driven the Dempster and everything.
That's
so cool.
Yeah saw a lot of grizzly bears. And my sister, she's 5 years younger, she was 3, and she was I'm like on live TV, not live TV, but I was like, she was just like a little terror sometimes when she was 3.
3.
Yeah.
3 natures.
And then you're just like, I want to throw you to the grizzly bears, and that here. Grizzly bear is he'll have his work cut out. But yeah, it was really neat to be able to camp and like go to Fort Liard, where it was like,
that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I spent my family moved to Mexico, so every summer I'd come back and I'd go to a summer camp, and we'd do canoe trips at summer camp, and it was like a means to maintain a connection with Canada. So I spent a lot of time camping as a kid. When I was 12, I did a 10-day trip, and then every year it was like a 3-week trip after that, and I ended up working at that summer camp up until 2021. when I came here.
Yeah.
Every summer, 18 summers consecutively, I spent in Temagami, Ontario.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time because my grandma was in Ontario, so then I would go back for the summers.
Yeah.
It was like, free childcare.
You have family roots there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you spent summers there often, or?
Yeah, I would spend it like when I was a little kid. So we'd be the unaccompanied minors. Parents put us on the flight and then go visit grandma for the summer.
That, yeah.
And, and then mom would pick us up and come back to Yellowknife for school. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then you went to school and you came back and you discovered that Yellowknife was a beautiful place and you wanted to stay there. How did your career progress from there?
Yeah. So I got a job as an intern with the Department of Transportation because I got my degree in communications. So worked for transportation and I finished my internship, which again was just like, oh, I'll stay for a year. Yeah. And then I was like, but there's actually nothing drawing me and this is like a really cool place.
Did you like was the work inspiring you or?
Yeah, it was really, and when I got my job at transportation, I was like, transportation? This is gonna be boring. But it was so instrumental in like learning more about, these are the roads and these are the communities that don't have any access all year round, and these are the ice roads and all the different challenges of transportation across. So in the end, it was just like
that's a big thing here, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Especially with the river being so low, it's like, what are we gonna do?
And like the winter roads that historically we were this long, and I think it was last year that up to Gamity and Wekwati, it was like they only had nighttime where that's generally just the tail end of the season. No, I definitely appreciated it and learned a lot, and then went on to work in communications for the territorial government and the Premier's office, and I would say saying yes to stuff when people asked, and so
that's a huge thing to do.
Yes,
it's like there's a lot of like anxiety choice, I think, in like the millennial generation and especially Gen Z probably.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, like if I choose to be like a lawyer, then like I don't get to be all these other things. What people don't realize who are young is like when you walk through a door, there's like 10 other doors and doors that you couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
Well,
when I was trying to, because people approached me to run for MP, and I was just like, oh, I hadn't considered it. And
as mayor, like recently?
Yeah. And I was like, let me think about that. And all it is like planting that seed. And then it's like, there's so many different options. Like, yes, I could stay mayor. Yes, I could go as MP, or, do 20 other things.
So as mayor, are you associated with a political party or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
So that was one thing. It was just like, okay, like, do I believe in this political party enough?
Sure.
It's a different role. There's like different commitments, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you're aware of like saying yes and making it the right choice instead of trying to figure out what the right choice is, because they're all the right choice. Just make it the right choice. And so
yeah. Well, it depends on the level of commitment that you put in and what you make of it to make it the right choice.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was, we think so often in those binaries instead of being like, actually there's all these different things and you can make it the right choice. And so there was like,
well, it is possible to make wrong choices too.
There's very much. Say no to drugs would be a big thing.
That's a good one to stay
that
away
one will
from.
be there's no opening doors with that one. No. But some of the saying yes, I remember going for a coffee break and a friend was starting up the Vagina Monologues, and she's like, you should come out. And I was like, oh, I could come help. I'm not going to be in the production. But then I went to the meeting and I was like, actually, this is kind of interesting. And so then it kind of led to all these different people that I met that opened different doors that have led like all the way here. And even in 2012, a friend was going to run for city council, and she's like, can you be my campaign manager? Because communications. And I was like, sure. I don't know what a campaign manager is, but I'll figure it out. And then a couple weeks later, there happened to be this campaign school, and so I was like, oh, I better go to that so I can learn about this role.
How convenient.
Yeah. And when I went, it was like a campaign school for women.
Okay.
There was about 10 of us, and she was like, okay, who's going to run? And we're all like, I'm helping. And she's like, well, if nobody's going to run, we're never going to get more women elected. And I was like, oh, I'm busy. And she's like, you'll always be busy.
Yeah,
and like,
that's true.
Yeah. So
it's like having kids. There's never the right time.
No. Yeah. So it definitely got me thinking about it. And then I was like, I'm not seeing enough people that I'd want to vote for. So I'll put my name forward.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting concept that like I've been thinking about is like, if reasonable people stay out of politics.
Yeah.
You like cede the territory.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was part of the, like the MP too, was like,
Sure.
Is there somebody that I want to vote for? And so if not, I'll step up. And
that's like even outside of a political realm, it's like taking on more responsibility in your workplace. It's like, oh, I don't really want to be responsible for that. And then if you happen to, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have to gripe about what my boss is doing. I can just like hopefully do it in a good way, but then like also the way that you want to do it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's like taking ownership,
Yeah.
focusing on what you can change. You can't change everything.
No,
but
you cannot.
But there's lots of stuff that we have the power to do. And so actually like stepping up and that's, to our earlier conversation about, if you want to start something in the North, you can. Yeah. Step up and help.
It's true. It is, we need people in this world. 'Cause I often find there's so much like proclamation of what we're going to do, but then not much follow through, and having people who like know what it actually takes to get something done, because it's always way more work than you expect.
Oh, yeah.
It's always 10 times as much work as you expect. Like even if you're like, we're going to have a hosted dinner at the Legion, it's like, oh, I'll come at 4:30 and it'll be at 6. It's like, no, you're not going to pull it off. Like you should be there at 11 a.m. and you'll guarantee that it will be good.
Yeah.
Or you could totally risk it and it could be horrible.
Well, we love to oversimplify things, and then we run into issues.
That's chronic.
Yeah. So it's like,
I don't even know what to do about that. That's chronic in humans, and there's nothing to do about it. Like, we're just going to do that forever.
Yeah. So it's like, let's peel back the onion. And, we also love to jump to solutions before we've defined a problem.
Yeah, or peel back the onion forever and never jump to any solutions.
Yeah.
Just talk about things endlessly.
Because it's going to be such a big problem. So I'm like, let's define the problem. Let's start. And there's no silver bullet. There's lots of little steps we can take.
And there's problems with all of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of like part of being human is like, it's a imperfect practice.
And the thing I've told, because I'm on my 4th council now, so I've served with a bunch of different people, and right now the council was...
And have you been on council?
Yeah, so I was a councilor for 2 terms, and then this is my 2nd term as mayor. Yeah, so, take it or leave it, I would tell people. But for council, it was like, we've got to make a decision, and it might not be perfect, but if we still have the opportunity to adjust it if it doesn't work out. And it was like, it's not brain surgery or heart surgery, but then even saying that example, somebody was like, you can sometimes still go in and fix those. And I was like,
that's true.
Yeah. So like implement, review, monitor, make changes. But
how do you kind of balance that? Like, you're not going to please everybody, because like often a good manager isn't trying to please everybody. Like you can't, like, you'll work yourself into bad policies and a nightmare if you try and please everybody. So like, how do you balance that in your work? Yeah,
it is taking a look at like doing the research of defining the problem. Is this solution going to meet that problem? Taking a look at who's not at the table, because we'll have people come in and say that's a terrible idea, especially for housing, and I'm like, because you have a house, and so it's not in your interest to have more housing, but there's all these people that need housing. And so it is recognizing that you're not going to please everyone. And I say that to new folks too, is like, even if I said like, oh, free ice cream for everybody, somebody's gonna be like, I'm on a diet, that's terrible.
I'm lactose or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm like, there's no pleasing everybody. You got to look at the greater good.
It's this kind of conundrum, I feel like, with democracy, where it's like you're aiming to represent the voice of the people that you're representing, but then also you're not going to please everyone, so you kind of just need to make decisions at some point. And it's like a catch-22 almost. And
it's not necessarily majority rules. Sometimes you have to represent the minority too.
Sure. And
sometimes you have to represent the people that aren't here, but that there are going to be here, like the kids, they're going to need housing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
or a pension or whatever.
Yeah. It is like, it's tough because you have to juggle and think through all these different things.
And then simultaneously, you can't like sacrifice the present for the hypothetical future either.
Yeah. Oh, it's not an easy thing to like navigate all these things. And that's where, when people simplify it because an example is on housing, where people are like, we don't want any more housing in the community and I don't want our taxes to go up. I'm like, well, you can't have both. And so
we don't want any more housing in the community. So they don't want.
Well, it's always like, it'd be best if the housing was over there.
Well, yeah, sure.
But I don't want my taxes to go up.
And So,
well, if you have housing over there, we're going to have to need new roads. We're going to need more plow. We're going to need more maintenance. So that's going to have an increase to your taxes. And so it's also about explaining to people the trade-offs. Because people aren't aware of all the different things that you have to think through in a decision. And so,
and in the municipal realm, you have a much tighter budget and a real budget as opposed to a federal realm or whatnot, where there's like kind of hypothetical money or whatever.
And it's tricky because you are thinking about like, you're trying to develop these programs for the whole country and, you know, what's going to work. And so it is, you know, if there's an opportunity to not get super prescriptive, but really talk about those objectives that we want to achieve instead of like saying like all housing must look like this in Canada. It's like, we're trying to achieve this many houses, and how is that going to work in your area?
This many houses as in like this many dwellings, not like not houses.
Exactly.
Specifically. It could be like condominiums and things like that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting with like word choices of like, because I would think of homes being like condos or anything, but somebody might have that idea that a house is a stick-built standalone.
Yeah. Well, not a home, but a house feels more like a standalone stick-built. Or like at least a standalone. Yeah. Not necessarily stick-built.
And that's how we get into thinking we're all talking about the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we walk out of the room and be like, what? I thought we came to agreement.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah. So to like kind of check back in of like, are we talking about the same thing? And how do you see that moving? So I think that's where really defining the problem is so important.
Yeah.
If we can get agreement, that's the problem we're trying to solve, we can check against that when we come forward with solutions.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So in leadership positions, like I studied leadership in school. So I studied outdoor recreation, parks and tourism, and I kind of specialized in leadership. And that interest came from working at summer camp and like leading trips. So like taking 10 kids out on the land and like being gone for 3 weeks and, you know, working with them. And we did a lot of group, like insight. So we would like sit down with the kids at night, and I often led all boys trips. And we would, you know, ask them questions like, when's the last time you cried? And then everyone was expected to answer. With 16-year-old boys, it's kind of something they don't talk about that much, right?
Yeah.
So it was a great
question.
It was a really cool program. Well, it's like, when's the last time you cried and why? And like, the first kid who goes has got a lot of courage, but the second kid who goes as well. Yeah. And then once you go around the circle, after that, the amount of trust that people have with each other is like so much. And that's the thing about vulnerability, right? Is that you give someone the keys to hurt you, and then you trust them enough to not.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the things that we talked about were like, what are our own weaknesses and strengths? And people have a difficult time like extrapolating. It's like, oh, what's your weakness? It's like, oh, I work too hard. It's like, okay, get out of here. But like, So like, what do you feel like you brought to the table as council and mayor that are your strengths? But then also like, where do you feel like you have your growth zone?
Yeah. So I would say it's working together. So convening people.
Is it your strengths?
Yeah. And like data analysis, research, education, like, you know, when an issue comes forward, I take a lot of time to review it and take a look what's happening elsewhere. And so I don't just go with like my gut.
Sure.
This.
Yeah.
Weaknesses.
See, this is the vulnerability part.
Yeah. It is, I would say that I'm so action oriented and I just want to get stuff done that I can move too fast and not bring everybody along with me, which is a challenge and like can slow the process down. So like, you know, I hear it, and because people are knocking on my door and being like, I want housing, like this is, and they tell me their story on how they're
housing in the north is a whole thing. It's
exactly.
a whole thing.
And so I'm like, I see the steps we can take and the policies, and like, let's go ahead, and how to bring like the rest of the community along so that we don't have the pushback. And so I find that challenging, and that can be one of my weaknesses, I would say, is just being too action oriented and not taking enough time to explain the why. Yeah.
So I hadn't thought about housing in Yellowknife a lot because I'm mostly thinking about Norman Wells.
Yeah.
But Is there like a large cohort of the population that just doesn't want to expand Yellowknife at all, at all, or is the nature of the landscape of Yellowknife very difficult to develop? Like, what are some of the challenges that are plaguing the city or whatever?
Both. Yeah. Because nobody wants more housing in their neighborhood.
Sure.
It's fine. I'm fine. Go do it over there. But we're landlocked in that we've got this big lake. We've got 2 gold mines. We've got the Acacia land claim, and so we only have
it's very difficult to expand outwards.
Yeah, so we only have some pockets of land, and then on top of that is then the cost to develop, and so
sure,
it is most cost effective and best for the taxpayer because at the same time, every budget people are like, don't raise my taxes.
Well, understandably.
So, yeah. So you're like infill and growth, but that's where you get the pushback, and so again, it's like
And, I'm not an expert in this at all, but it does seem to me like, often one of the solutions is to like build condominiums. And I feel like you see this like way more in Toronto than here. But like the need for single family homes is like so much greater, but there's much less development of that. So like I understand, like you could put up like tons of condominiums and in theory you could fill them all, but people don't want to live in condominiums their whole life, like...
There's this term, it's called the missing middle. And so what we have in Canada a lot is the big apartment and then the single family house. And we don't have the duplex, the secondary suites, all that stuff. The 4-plex, 6-plex. So,
or you have like a lot of country homes. Like big country homes and then condos, but not like, necessarily lots of duplexes or suburbs or whatnot. But,
and that's where when you look at our demographic in Yellowknife is shifting in the plus 65 is increasing, and so we've got these 5-bedroom houses that families need, but there's just one person living in it because the rest of the family's moved out. But they want their yard they don't want to move into that. But if we had like the townhouses,
and like they're entitled to live in their house. You know what I mean? Like
it's a North American thing. Because when I was talking to somebody from I think it was Amsterdam, they were just like, like society wise, there's an expectation that you not just give that, but like that house becomes available.
I understand that, and it will eventually.
But we're like, a bit more individualistic versus some other countries, but so then in Yellowknife, having a lot of the single family houses, we do have a lot, but
I wouldn't really
we're missing
live in a 5-bedroom home alone, anyways. It's kind of huge.
Yeah, and having the.
But the problem is like you wouldn't necessarily want to move into like. Maybe you're used to living in a place like that. You don't really want a condominium. Maybe you want a 2-bedroom home that feels similar to your 5-bedroom home.
Yeah. Or you want to put a unit in your backyard.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have got the backyard and then you rent your 5-bedroom house and you have the lawn out front and stuff. That's kind of cool. So, there's there was some work too. The last Liberal government was to provide renovation credits to recognize the multi-generational too.
Okay.
So there's also like a changing demographics, and there's different, folks looking for those multi-generational house where grandma can come live too. So
absolutely. Okay, so then you're mayor of Yellowknife. How long have you been mayor up until this point?
7 years.
7 years. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Went through COVID and
lucky person. So lucky.
COVID, the 2023 evacuation,
the fires, the floods, all that jazz. Very cool.
Yeah.
Man, the fires must have been insanely stressful as mayor.
Yep. Yeah. That was a lot, and then 2024 was. We started 2023 with a municipal strike, and then transitioned into hosting Hay River, who was evacuated due to the fire, and then we were evacuated ourselves. And then our SAO gave us notice in November, but left in March.
Yeah, so. I feel like one of the big criticisms of the territorial government is like, oh, you're not proactive enough, and it's like really difficult to be proactive when you're constantly
fighting
faced with
fires.
Well, like literally, but then. I was talking to someone here, and I was just like, oh, you know what we should do right now, since the ground is frozen, is cut all the fire breaks. And they're like, that would be awesome, except for all these reasons. And it's well, what are we going to do? That's very expensive or whatever. Like,
And fire breaks are tough, too, because, we were chipping away a little bit at a time.
Oh, man, the aerial images of the before and after are pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I was like, but we've been doing fire breaks. Let me see. And I was like, that looks like a toothpick
Yeah.
from
Snack.
yeah,
Fire snack.
yeah. So that's the challenge with it's northern, indigenous, remote communities that tend to be threatened, and we're the ones that have to balance our budgets.
For sure.
And so having these multi-million-dollar fire breaks would be awesome, and we all want that. And that's where we need like the support of the federal and territorial government. And,
yeah. Or just everyone to pick up an axe and go out for a day.
Yeah, I think that opportunities for creative.
Imagine the chaos and the axe injuries.
Well, I think of like, could we give a bit more to residents? Like we have so many people that have fireplaces. Can this be like the wood fire cutting zone for
that'd be cool.
Year?
That's smart.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'd love that.
It was like people just are going out in the forest.
They're cutting down trees anyways.
So it'd be like, this is the area we're targeting this year. Yeah. So
not bad.
Yeah, I think.
I wonder if that would save any money. Like maybe a little bit. I feel like still the cleanup would still be almost the cost of the fire break in the beginning.
Oh, you still need to do like those. That would look like even smaller toothpicks that we're clearing.
Totally.
Because when I was in Whitehorse in September, I went to where they're doing they're taking a step where they are doing like the full clear, but then they're doing a back burn and then they're planting aspens.
Cool.
Yeah.
Smart.
So it's like
it's
going that extra mile.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's hard to do.
It costs $1 million a year that they're investing.
$1 million in aspen.
Yeah. And then, trying to find that circular economy too is like, who can have a little greenhouse of aspens to sell across the north?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, this is the kind of thing where like there's an opportunity, but someone actually has to do it.
Yeah.
It's like here. It's like it would be great to have like one or multiple small engines mechanics, but then someone actually needs to be a small engines mechanic.
Yeah, and it is tricky with having so many government positions. It's like
totally,
it's luring.
Well, like yes, and there's a lot of security in those, but then there is also like a really hard ceiling in terms of growth.
Yeah,
and I don't feel like, at least this is my experience as like a business owner, there are enough people doing small businesses and kind of like private like work as much as there could be. Like and often it feels like there's government like how do I say this, like attempts to kind of fill those roles, but they don't like kind of work out quite the same way as like, and they're not as sustainable, but it's the same kind of thing. Like often there's like a government initiative that's like so great, but it all hinges on like X person being here and then they move.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, it was a government thing, but it really was thanks to that person that like it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's a few gardening examples of that.
Yeah.
And that was where like for my soccer coaching was like I could continue to just be a soccer coach, but at the time I was the only certified female in the Northwest Territories, which meant like it was on me. If I couldn't coach, the NWT couldn't go to Canada Games.
The women's team?
Yeah. Because you're supposed to have like a female accompany.
So it's like if you move on or do whatever with your life,
then
they lose all their opportunities.
Yeah. And I'm like,
that's great.
No, I can't. I've got to like grow the capacity, grow the pool. And now there's like tons of women, men, etc. that are certified, and
cool.
It's like
that's
off
awesome.
my shoulders. So yeah, trying to develop the systems, the people to grow.
And it's a double-edged sword because both it's awesome that you took on that responsibility, but it also wasn't necessarily singly your responsibility to take care of that problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like say you wanted to like divert your attention and like raise kids or whatever, and it's like, well, that seems way more important to me than being a soccer. Like, I'm sorry, but like, it's like, anyways. Community is hard.
Yeah.
And amazing at the same time.
I was like, if it gets you jazzed, which it gets me jazzed to help and be like,
totally.
Yep, I know. And a lot of it's just like quiet and people don't know that, it's thanks to you that X, Y, and Z happened, but most people aren't in it for the praise when they're helping community.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're mayor and been on mayor for 7 years through thick and thin, and then someone goes, you should run for MP. What?
Yeah.
Where did? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
And do you feel like, say you don't get a seat, do you feel like associating yourself with a party is like detrimental to your mayorship?
I think some people could view it as that.
Yeah.
But municipalities
like mostly because it's a non-political position.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it can take a bit of
mayorship. Is that right?
Yeah, your worship. I think some people could hold a grudge,
Sure.
but it is about working together, and it's like, hey, put your egos aside. I'm mayor, and I'm now here to work with you as the federal MP. We were competitors last, but now we're collaborators. So I think that's important for anybody to know.
Okay.
And then why was, there's so much that mayors, and I don't see it as like a step up, which some people do. I'm like, they're just too different.
In some ways, it could be seen as that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and somebody was just like, why do you want to be one of 343? Right now you're like the mayor. And I'm like, yeah, but there's just different authorities, responsibilities, ways that I can help. And, there's a limit on what the mayor can do to help address homelessness and addictions. And those are big things in Yellowknife and across the Northwest Territories.
Yeah, sure.
And so being able to...
Well, also, your attention is just on Yellowknife right now, whereas as an MP, you would be on the whole territory.
Yeah, exactly. And hearing a lot of the same number one issues when going to the communities, it's just, everybody's got a slightly different idea on what could be done to address it. But
I actually find that's often the case, even across the political divide, where it's like, oh, we actually agree on like 99% of things. We just disagree on the solution.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I was at a conference last year, and there was a former liberal MP, he was a minister, and then a former conservative, and they were just talking about like back in the 90s, but that people did work better together, and you can get stuff done.
I'm optimistic that we can get to a place like that. I feel like humanity is like calibrating social media right now, and like I think even with the rise of like people understanding that like maybe it's not good for 13-year-olds to have Instagram, we might get to a place where we have a much healthier relationship with it, because it's not going anywhere. And we also like, it came on so quickly, like how like there would be a huge interruption, right? And I think it's cool to see political candidates kind of doing more podcasts and things like that. Like I really admire citizen journalism, because I think I'm not really a journalist by any means, but like even this kind of thing where it's like, let's just sit down and have a conversation, because aired like mainstream media airtime is like so expensive.
Oh yeah.
And you can't like sit down and have a conversation like this. In that realm. It's not a thing.
No.
You get clips and snippets, and then it's on to X, Y, and Z.
And I find it's hard for residents, because I remember I've done a lot of media interviews, and the interview will be sometimes 30 minutes.
Sure.
And then the clip that get aired is 30 seconds.
Well,
and then residents come up and they're like, why didn't you say X? And I was like, I did, but that was the 29 minutes and 30 seconds that were cut.
Yeah.
And so like you don't get a full hour.
There was a CBC North did a segment on this podcast, and we talked for 30 minutes, and I think it was 4 minutes long. And I understand, but bandwidth is now plentiful. Like there's no limit on bandwidth essentially that we need to like worry about. So
well, and then it's like the attention.
Well, yeah, there's that. There is a limit on that.
Yeah. I'm like, but I'm a big podcast listener, so yeah. I do like the more long form, and
well, like even the discussions that we had about housing right now were like very surface level or whatnot, but like it's probably more than
that I get.
Yeah.
And that's always the challenge, is like explain this really complicated issue in...
Yeah, it's like, what do you think about housing? And it's like, oh, we need more of it. All right, and on to this.
Yeah, and be like, you didn't get concrete. And I'm like, oh, trust me, I want to delve into the... sometimes, people are like, okay, you little policy wonk. I'm like, but you don't understand. The zoning bylaw is so important, and
and complicated, and could be restrictive in some ways, but really important in other ways. And,
yeah.
There's always more to it. Yeah, I think that I'm optimistic that we kind of get more adjusted. Again, like calibrating the social media thing, but then also like, I think it would be so cool if like federal candidates had to do like the same eight podcasts with like, and even if the podcasts were biased, just have a good spread.
Listen to this. What is ground? I'm gonna forget the app name, but
Ground News.
Ground News. Yeah, where it's
Ground News is awesome.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's super useful.
Yeah. And I was like, and I try to look too, because we get into their echo chambers. And so I'm like, does everybody feel this way? And that's the thing for new counselors. I was like, are you listening to the vocal minority, or is that the majority? And make sure that you're trying
well,
to
you could also be in a vocal minority, but you perceive it as a majority.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like everybody.
I'm to the point where I don't really believe that there's anyone outside of an echo chamber. I'm not convinced that you can know.
Yeah. No, and that's the hard part. And I'm like, I try in the course of a week, in the course of a month to make sure that I'm like reaching out to different groups and trying to get that different pulse. Because if I just rely on social media, which a lot of people do, it's your echo chamber. And
totally.
And then it is hard to counter, which I can appreciate, the folks in the States that thought the election wasn't true, because all they see on their social media is this support for one person. Like,
totally.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's, if you get out and you talk to a variety of people, you'll see that there's
always going to be a variety of perspectives, but like, again, like you could get out and think that you're talking to a variety of people, but there's just other people that you don't reach.
Oh no, 100%. Yeah. And you're like, even going to
where it's like, I talked to a conservative and someone from the NDP, but they're all boomers or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Everybody's middle income.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
exactly.
Like, how do you go and have and like, it is tricky too during election campaigns. This one's 36 days, and like I would love to delve into issues more and really talk to X, Y, and Z people to get their perspective, but
totally.
You're limited.
Mm-hmm. Us being in the Sahtú and talking about transportation and whatnot, do you have a perspective on the Mackenzie Valley Highway? I'd love to kind of pick your brain about that and in terms of how you see your MP-ship possibly impacting that.
Yeah. So it being led by the territorial government and working with Indigenous governments, but at the federal level, advocating and pounding on the doors if I'm not on cabinet to advance that project, I think is really important.
Have you heard of the perspective of it being wrapped under NATO spending?
I have, and I met with the Minister of Defense's staff in October. We were down NWT, we were lobbying days.
Yeah.
So it can't go under NATO spending, because then every government would be like, oh yeah, no, that's our NATO spending, that road over there.
Damn.
So it doesn't work in that regard.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
I was like, this is genius.
Yeah. No, I know. When I heard about it, I was like, great, NATO. No.
Yeah.
There's other things that we can do for the NATO spend.
Sure.
The Rangers increasing the pay for CAF members, etc.
Yeah, certainly.
I think for the Mackenzie Valley Highway, it's more the climate change, the fact that like the river it's not.
Well, the Winter Road did us good this year.
It did. Got 130% of the loads, I heard. So.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and I worked at Divik, and so I remember Winter Road season, like our procurement manager didn't sleep because he's like, is it gonna last? Are we gonna get the loads?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
It's a wild time.
Yeah. And
that's something that like people not from here don't. It's such a foreign concept.
Yeah, and people don't realize like we used to have the Herc, and and so like at the diamond mines, if a big piece of equipment didn't make it on the Winter Road but was needed, you could get that to fly up.
Yeah.
But now the only plane that's available is a Russian one, and we're not getting that Russian.
You mean a Russian-owned plane?
A Russian-owned plane.
We don't have Hercs of our own in Canada?
Not that I'm aware
are
of.
available? Well, I have no idea.
Yeah. No, so the only plane that was available...
like some oligarch's plane?
Yeah, is like this big to be able to do big big loads.
Like move an excavator?
Yeah.
That's
so it's big. Like...
you can't get like 25 helicopters to do that?
Yeah, be like, everybody just go. Yeah. So that was, like, we can't get that in
Does our military not have Hercs?
I think they were all sold off.
That's silly.
Yeah. So it's like if there's no options.
Well, I remember them talking about bringing a Herc in if that was possible for the fuel crisis here in November. And then I think it was something like, it's not going to be cheaper. That's what it came down to. And then it was like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah. I'll have to double check if the Canadian government, but from my understanding, they all got sold off.
Okay. Yeah. So no Hercs. We need a highway.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic that project could possibly happen ever?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
A tentative.
Yeah. Like with the eyes on the Arctic right now, and just kind of trying to finding the silver lining in that crisis.
Because there's people here who are just like, it's not going to happen. We've been talking about it for 50 years. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Why are we even talking about it anymore? Because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know. And I know like some of the challenges getting supports in the valley too can kind of go off and on. So, but from what I'm hearing, folks in the valley are supportive.
In the Mackenzie Valley?
In the Mackenzie Valley.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, at the Ottawa level.
I understand that it would be like a disruption in some ways, but I can't see an alternative where there's a prosperous future here without it.
And if the water levels continue to remain
my
low,
prediction is that it's going to be low and then it's going to flood.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to have the opposite problem.
We had the same in Yellowknife.
Yeah.
Where it was like record high. And that may happen is record high, record low. And then so it's just like not having that
more my point is like, we'll find a way to complain about it somehow.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. But it is also continuing to look at, I know the hovercrafts have been considered and drones and all this stuff too. So
I think the drones will come around eventually, but it's going to take 50 years till you can move an excavator with a drone.
Yeah. But to continue to look at like the technology, that's what I think.
Hovercraft. I love the idea.
It never gets off the ground.
I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's. I think also like when it comes to energy, continuing to like the research or the products have grown so substantially, and I know in Yellowknife we've looked a number of times at waste to energy, and at the time the technology wasn't good, but it continues to progress.
What's your perspective on like modular nuclear, like small nuclear reactors?
There are some Indigenous governments that do want to consider that in the Northwest Territories.
I can imagine, because you get one here and it's like, oh, energy needs are taken care of for like 25 years.
Yeah.
And then you get like another little like bowl of uranium and you move on to another 25 years. Yeah. I know I'm being super, simplistic here, but
it's the social license that will take a bit of to get
people just not being afraid of it.
Yeah. So I think that'll be the one thing, but it is, Indigenous governments are considering it.
I was listening to an interview where they're talking about modular nuclear and these people who are building them, and they're going, one of the big questions is like, well, how, they're like, what is scale? Because when you get the scale, they're affordable. And they're like, 9 a year. And it's like, oh, well, that doesn't sound so difficult.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not really optimistic that like that could be a thing, because like those small ones, okay, I'm not a nuclear, like anything, whatever. Like I'm just
not a nuclear physicist.
No, and I don't know.
There's a whole bunch that were laid off in the States.
We should hire them.
Exactly.
Apparently, the like idea of this modular nuclear, the small reactors, you could put them on a truck. You know what I mean?
And they're being used in submarines and
yeah, exactly.
The challenge,
and those people don't explode or die all the time.
Yeah. It's like if it happens in the ocean, it would drop.
No. If it happens in the ocean underwater in a little capsule.
Yeah. But it's been a long-standing technology.
I so hope that becomes a thing, because it would be such a relief for these small communities, because then you would have so many more options.
Yeah.
I think it would be so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So continuing to look at as the research and evolution happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, look how quick Starlink changed and Elon side. But like...
Yeah, but whatever. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, Colville Lake was out negotiating their treaty, their self-government agreement on the land. So meetings
like
and then
hunting caribou with a Starlink on the back.
It was basically like meetings during the day, hunting and traditional activities in the evening. So yeah,
there's guys that drive the winter road with the Starlink on their truck now, and they have it serviced the whole way. Yeah, with like a car battery.
Yeah, which I also think like the climate change perspective and investing in infrastructure and technology for the health centers, because yes, people need to be medevaced for a variety of reasons, but with the climate change and it can be weathered into your community, you're going to need that technology to, push a button, boom, getting assistance from Yellowknife, Edmonton, whatever it may be. Yeah. Because you can't wait for a plane to come in 3 days when the fog lifts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's the issues that come up with a very small population that's very isolated and very remote, and there's huge swaths of land between people. It's really challenging, especially so like a lot of the things where it's like, I remember sitting in on the Sahtú summit, and I was filming, and people were talking about the issues with medevac, and one of the issues was like something about just ID, and there like wasn't a convenient solution. Like it was like we need to know who you are. Like it was one of those things where it's like we could solve all these problems, but then if someone doesn't have this small thing, there is like really a barrier to help, like, you know, I don't know, like things like that.
That's where like we do still look to I say the 1990s, but even the 1960s solutions. Sure. Instead of being like, is there something out here? AI, you know, I think in algorithms and the opportunities in the north to...
What do you mean 1960s solutions?
I remember...
You said 1960s and then AI in the same sentence. So
sorry, I'm also known to like just jump.
Are you a rhizomatic thinker?
Yeah.
Do you know what that means, rhizomatic? So like it's the pattern in which mushrooms grow. So like there's linear thinkers and then there's rhizomatic thinkers, and I'm a rhizomatic thinker.
Yeah, and I'm also one that like, you got the idea. Okay, let's move on. Next. Yeah, when I talk about like, and I'm fast, let's go.
Yeah.
More like we've got a problem, so we look to the past for a solution instead of being
true.
Yeah, we've got a problem. Is there something that can help? Is it maybe like close? We need some more research, and then it'll be ready.
Yeah, I think there's benefits to both. You know, humans are amazing. They're like some of the projects that humans have taken on in the past, like. This is like not relevant to the north at all, but like one of the issues that Chicago faced was like it was sinking at one point, so they just jacked up the whole city like 6 feet and like put a bunch of infill in under it. Like this actually happened, and it's like they did that, and then they also reversed the flow of the river. Not that who knows about climate or whatnot, but their sewage was going into Lake Superior, so they just swapped it.
And there's an element of like sometimes we only look to the future and forget to look to the past for
totally.
Yeah, I was in Tunisia in August 2022. It was, I think the hottest, it was 47 degrees, melting. I had to go back and look at like the temperature of a sauna because I'm like, holy.
Yeah.
But I went into this traditional home, and it was a comfortable 20 degrees, I think. No air conditioning. And
what, mud walls?
Yeah.
My parents live in a mud house.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh, this is, you know, like as much as we think we're like so advanced, it's sometimes looking at that past for those solutions.
Mud houses in the north don't really
work.
No.
But then it's like when Canada Goose went to synthetics instead of
lame.
I'm like, no, use
you
the
can't call yourself
traditional
Canada Goose anymore.
Yeah. I'm like, there's a reason that fur is used.
Yeah, seriously.
So,
it's crazy what it can do for
balancing of taking, I guess, being more holistic in our look of like maybe there's a solution from the past, maybe there's something coming up.
Well,
let's not get stuck.
Both things are true simultaneously. Yeah. So what's your like elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So I would say some of the top issues hearing is drugs, and that's across the Northwest Territories. And so really, I think it's got to be that two-pronged approach, like enforcement's necessary and there needs to be improvements in that area. Like updates, there were updates to the bail reform at the beginning of 2024, but stuff like reverse onus, but it was for certain offenses. So broadening that. The other one is about, you know, because you can't just enforce your way out of drugs. It is about addictions, so recovery, treatment, aftercare. And the other thing is about supporting community programming. And so one of the things in Colombia, in Medellin, was to take down the cartel. It wasn't just like police coming in. They actually invested in public transit and libraries because parents were away for 6 hours a day just in commute. It took 3 hours to get to work, 3 hours home. So for that 6 hours, kids were being preyed on by these gangs who got them sucked in. So they invested in public transit. Parents are able to get to jobs in 45 minutes.
Didn't they do like this, they like...
escalators.
Well, yeah, but
the gondolas.
Yeah, gondolas.
Yeah. So it was escalators, gondolas, and a light rail transit.
Man, the benefits of having a warm climate, hey?
Yeah. But like, and then there was also programmings for kids to do during the day, and with public transit, you know, parents were able to, you know, get other jobs too instead of the gang. So I don't think you can just enforce our way out of the drug crisis. I think it's health crisis. And then also housing. And so, you know, we've seen people go for, there has been a lot of investment in housing, and, you know, houses still have to get built from all the investments that have been made. But continuing in regards to like transitional housing, for like in Yellowknife and Inuvik, there's addictions recovery transitional housing. For Providence is building transitional housing for women and children, a 62 bed facility. So continuing for the drug crisis, housing, and then in the economy, really looking at the infrastructure, but also supporting we've got tourism, we've got traditional economy, we've got, you know, folks want to do fishing, and so being able to really support communities. One of the big things too is the Indigenous-led conservation, so our land for the future, and so that is jobs. And I'm all about killing kind of two birds with one stone, or many birds. But with the Indigenous-led conservation, it is, you know, folks out on the land, so looking at monitoring and getting that data. It's cultural, it's boots on the ground from an Arctic sovereignty perspective. So that our land for the future, I think, is a really important project. The funding hasn't been approved because the government prorogued, so that would be one of the first things I'd be looking to do. The importance of that is also, you know, with Russia right now, science isn't being shared. So from a climate change perspective, the States, we're seeing, you know, science isn't being respected. So we're going to have this huge gap in Arctic science and climate change. So Canada, the EU are really going to have to step up and fill in those gaps. And so I think our land for the future is a great opportunity.
Cool.
Bit more than an elevator pitch, but
you know, 13 floors.
Yeah. One of those really tall buildings.
Yeah. Not in Yellowknife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been an hour and 2 minutes. It just flies
perfect.
by.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you coming on and taking the the risk and the opportunity to come on here. And
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.